Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and this one's killer. It's with Robert Moss. He is the contributing barbecue editor for Southern Living magazine, and he recently came out with a list called the South's Best New Barbecue Joints of 2024. We go into a deep dive of the top 15. Time-wise, it made more sense. On the online version has 22. The print version has 15, so we went through the top 15 in depth. We also went into his process and what he considers new for this list. And I promise you, there's a number of barbecue joints you've never heard about. There's a number of barbecue joints I have never heard about. I feel like I have a great knowledge of barbecue joints across the United States. So I can't thank Robert enough for taking the time. This is chock full of information. So sit back, relax, enjoy this, and be sure to visit your local barbecue joint. Good morning, good afternoon, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to you. Nice to see you. It's nice. I think this is probably either our third or fourth time we've talked. I'm not sure.
Done it several times, I know, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And this is interesting. So you have a new list, and it's the. Do you want to state what exactly it's called so that way I don't butcher it?
Yeah, it's Southern Living's. I think it's the best new barbecue joints in the South 2024 edition. As background, we now are, I think, officially doing 3 different barbecue lists with Southern Living. I do the top 50 list, which is the top 50 barbecue in all the South. And, did that one last year, and we've decided, you really can't do that every year because there's not enough changes from one year to next in the
Sure.
barbecue world. You want to have the top 50 each year, and it basically is the same list. So we decided this year we were going to do what we did back in 2021, which was the best new barbecue joints. And since we had done one in 2021, sort of the cutoff is since the last list. So basically 3 years, which, in terms of restaurants, that's not, there are lots of restaurants open in 3 years, but in terms of good barbecue joints, that's a pretty good window to let enough new places come along that are worth writing about. And I always want to distinguish these 2 lists, which are the ones that I, as the contributing barbecue editor, picked myself and totally 100% to blame for, versus the South's Best list, which comes out in the spring each year, I think in April. That is a big reader survey, and that list will do the best barbecue in each state in the South, and that's picked by this giant survey of 60,000 Southern Living readers. Now it gets confusing because I write up the blurbs for like who won to talk about and describe why, why people like it so much, but I don't actually pick that list. That one is sort of the popular vote. So you've got the popular list, the popular vote, and you got the editor's vote. And a lot of times there's a lot of overlap on those lists because, it's, I always say good barbecue tends to bubble to the top.
When does the voting come out for that? Is that
It's you're always hard when you're working in the magazine world because there's such a lead time on
yeah.
things, so I have to have it submitted. The voting will be sometime in the fall.
Okay.
And then I always get the results, and I think I'm always submitting them sometime in December. And then it comes out like 4 months later by the time I've totally forgotten about it, because the print world, it takes them a long time to get a magazine laid out and printed. I've totally forgotten what's happening. But yeah, the cycle, I think I will probably be getting email from my editor soon as they're starting to assemble the poll. They always run by the list that they're going to put on there with me to make sure that we haven't missed anything, to any worthy candidates that should be on the poll list.
Okay. So now with the new list, is it so since 2021? But are there other criteria that you thought of, like, to put them under the new category?
Yeah, so if you sort of lay out the rails or the guidelines, first is new. We define that as since the last list, so it was since September 2021. And then what is a new restaurant? For me, my definition, at least, that I picked, it can't just be the second location of a existing barbecue restaurant. A lot of barbecue restaurants are opening second, third, fourth locations,
definitely.
and so that we can't really call it. I don't consider that a new restaurant. It's just a new location of an existing restaurant. However, with the caveat that it could be the same owners. If the same owner opens another restaurant that has a totally different, especially different name, different theme, if the food in the menu is very different than the other one, I'll consider that a second.
Gotcha.
A second restaurant, not just a second location, because it's not trying to replicate it. So that was sort of my new criteria. And then the tough one is sort of the existential question: what is a barbecue joint? And I use the word joint specifically because I like the term, and also because it seems to encapsulate some things. I don't consider some guy who sets up a tent at a brewery and sell, with a smoker and sells barbecue once a month or every couple weeks to be a barbecue joint. And that's a barbecue, barbecue operation for
Mhm.
sure, but it's not a restaurant. And then you start to evolve. And what if you set up at the brewery, 3 times a week? What if you get a food truck? What if you know,
Uh-huh.
but if the food truck drives around in parks and you have to look on Instagram to find them, yeah, I don't consider that a joint. It's not a place you go to. It's a roving operation. Somewhere in the middle, they'll settle down long enough to be permanent, and maybe it doesn't have to be an actual brick and mortar restaurant with air conditioning and chairs and all that kind of stuff, but it does need to be some kind of permanent operation. That was sort of my criteria, so that because there's so many people operating
Yeah.
great and they're really good barbecue food trucks and sort of pop-ups all over, but that I don't want to put a list of that then and not be able to tell you where to go
Yeah.
find them if you're in Houston or wherever you're looking for it. The one caveat I will say about this list, and I'll probably touch on it a bunch as we go, rules were meant to be broken, and almost every restaurant on this list breaks one of the rules in some way. And I'd say, well, sue me. I'm not going to
Well,
say
yeah,
that.
and also too, the barbecue world is ever changing, and the
Yeah,
restaurant world changes. So,
yeah,
but
for
in
sure.
the end, you wanted to make it some places that people could actually visit and not go have like to spend hours trying to figure out where they're located or what's happening.
Yeah, and that's always sort of a tough thing of how to how when do you become an actual permanent restaurant
Mhm.
versus just a mobile
Yeah,
truck or pop up?
and that's
And
usually a
the answer is
stepping
it's
stone.
gray.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great, and it's the stepping stone to eventually be getting a brick and mortar or a more permanent location, and then they
yeah, and
could.
I would say a good at least half the folks on this list start off exactly that way
Yeah,
with pop ups or food trucks or something of that
definitely.
nature.
Well, let's jump in. The list has 22 on the online list, and I could put
Online, yeah.
I'll put a link to that, and then the physical. I think people have received, are starting to receive, or have received the
Yeah, it's
actual.
in the September Southern Living, so it
Okay,
should be I always say on the newsstands, not that anybody goes to a newsstand anymore, but it should be in the mail
I
if you
know
have
of
a
one
subscription
newsstand near
or
me.
yeah, but you'll find it in the grocery store aisles, at least here in
Yeah,
the South, you will at least.
I love newsstands, and I love magazines. I was having a conversation with someone recently about magazines and how it's just something. There's something tangible. There's something I like. I always like newspapers. I like holding something. I love digital form of everything, but
Yeah.
the
If there's
deal in that
something about
world.
the layout, yeah, the page layout just is very
Yeah.
different. You can't get the same effect online. And so if you have a chance to pick out the magazine, I
Hmm.
always think the pieces are so much better when I read them in the magazine than
Yeah.
online, just because, it's a more, I don't know, just a much better reading experience. And I think that's why, magazines are not, you know, ha they're not doing great, but they're not going away. There's
Yeah.
still, I think, enough demand for them
Yeah, it
because
gives
it's a
me.
it's a great way to read things.
I agree. It gives me hope. Like it makes me, and also, but also too, like it makes me feel little bit. But like I harken back to the old days for so many things nowadays. But I
Yeah,
do.
me too.
I love that. So why don't we do, because of time and we want to do a deep dive on these restaurants? Let's start with the top 15, and let's go. Do you want to go
Okay.
back from 15 to one, so that way people can, and there's ones in this list, guys, that are listening and watching, that you probably haven't heard of, or that you've just heard a little bit about, and I wanted Robert to kind of go into more depth, because there's ones on the list too that I've heard of, but I don't know a whole lot about. Let's just
Yeah.
want to start it with tropicals in Florida.
Yeah, well, yeah, Tropical Smokehouse, which is in West Palm Beach, Florida. This is one that breaks the rules just a little bit. It's actually a little bit older than 3 years old. I think it opened in the spring of 2021, but I didn't get to it until after we had published the last list. And I like it so much, I wanted to get it on there, and definitely wanted to get on radar screen. Not only because it's a good barbecue joint, it's actually a chef named Richard Mace, who was a fine dining chef in the area, branched out into barbecue in 2021, got a big offset smoker. He has a couple of big Texas style offset smokers, a lot of Texas influence there. But what I really like about it is he sort of self-consciously set out to create sort of a Florida style of barbecue,
Yeah.
which is to take that Texas inspiration but then apply it to a lot of things that you have in Florida. So there's brisket and there's ribs, and it's all pretty good. But I'm most intrigued by the unique things there that you can't just get at any Texas style place. Like he'll dress the pulled pork in a mojo sauce, sort of that
Wow.
Caribbean citrusy garlicky sauce. He stuffs empanadas with brisket and cheese, which
Nice.
is really good. Except I would advise you. Um, pause, maybe cut one open a little bit before you bite into it. It will sear your tongue when you first bite into one of these deep fried empanadas. But brisket's a great use of brisket. It goes
Yeah,
great with
definitely.
the fried thing. But my favorite stuff is the smoked fish. He puts lots of fish on the offset smokers, and I think that it does really well. There's salmon, but I remember the smoked mahi best of all. It's like this big
Oh.
slab of mahi that's sort of golden brown with smoke and absolutely delicious. And that's just not something you get just about
Mm.
anywhere. So hopefully other folks in Florida will take a cue and start throwing everything else from the ocean onto the barbecue pit because
Yeah,
it's a
I've
really
seen
good
photos and it looks
innovation.
just fabulous.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
smart.
great. And that smoke flavor goes so well with all the Caribbean and Central American
Hmm.
inspired cooking. So I think it's a really great combination of flavors that's sort of unique to South Florida. And so, yeah,
And it seems like they
definitely.
have, from what I'm recalling, people, he's had a lot of collaborations. He's had people come out from Texas or from other places, right? Hasn't.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's sort of that fine dining crossover with barbecue and sort of the meeting of the two. So yeah, definitely a lot of collaboration, a lot of mashups going on down there.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely want to put that in West Palm Beach because I don't quite know. So is West Palm Beach, is that north of Miami or is that
Yeah, it's north of Miami, north of Fort Lauderdale.
okay?
It's just keep going up I-95. And actually, it's sort of like there's only two ways: the I-95, and you can go up that, and then there's, I guess, the US one, whatever the coastal highway is. It's right off that, which
Okay.
is just a mile or two east of I-95. It's a parking lot either way you decide to go, so it takes a long while. I was actually in Fort Lauderdale, drove up there. It took forever, but it was worth it. Right off the strip there in
Okay,
West Palm
cool.
Beach.
Well, it's nice to know that Florida's represented. I think that's like
Yeah.
it seems like for there's been a long time. There's been little places, they're not little, but there's been places here and there, but it seems like now we're getting a
I
chance
think
to.
Florida is finally catching its
Mm.
stride by sort of embracing a lot of the local flavors and not just trying to do pure Texas or somewhere else. Florida had a long barbecue tradition. I've written about that back in the
Yeah.
1940s, 1950s. It sort of never really developed into its own regional thing. So I think they're onto something now, and I think you'll see a lot more people talking about it, Florida barbecue in the future.
Go to number 14 is Rancho Lewis.
Rancho Lewis. Yeah. So this is another one. Rules meant to be broken. Is it really a barbecue joint? It's really John Lewis of Lewis Barbecue. So this is one of those second locations, totally unlike Lewis Barbecue. And there's actually two Lewis Barbecues now. There's one here in Charleston, and there's one up in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
Very similar. They're almost identical type restaurants. Rancho Lewis is John Lewis's homage to El Paso, where he grew up, and the food of El Paso. And so it's a blend of all the things he ate there. So
Uh,
he doesn't really call it Tex-Mex. Likes to call it border cuisine, which is sort of that because El Paso is right there
yeah.
on the Mexican border. It's right near Hatch, New Mexico. So tons of Hatch chilies. And they always had a lot of barbecue everywhere we went, particularly beef back ribs and cooking over mesquite. And he's telling me he's going to add more barbecue stuff to the menu. I think the smoked meat does really well, but the thing that puts it on the list, it just by itself qualifies as a barbecue joint, are these beef back ribs. And if you've ever seen a picture of them, they're massive. These aren't the
Mhm.
plate ribs that you think of with the slow smoked, that Central Texas has sort of become famous for. And John Lewis does a very great version at Lewis Barbecue. These are more the back ribs. They're long. They're the ones with the big,
Oh,
all huge
yes.
bones. They're like steak almost. It's like a bone with like ribeye steak or something hanging off of it. And he
Oh,
cooks it overnight on a mesquite pit, slow cooks it, just like you would ribs. And they finish them on. They have this big mesquite fire, wood fired grill at in the kitchen there. And so we order them, they'll put them on there, slather with glaze, and it's one of the best things. It's
wow.
some of the best beef I've ever eaten. And so that
Huh.
alone makes them one of the best new barbecue joints around.
And so where are they located? Are they in Charleston?
They're in Charleston, not too far, maybe a couple miles, 2 miles maybe from the Lewis Barbecue in
Mhm.
this sort of complex. It's right next to the Edmund Oast Brewery, if you're familiar with Edmund Oast beer, if you're from
Mhm.
this area.
I've
So
heard of it.
you can fill up on ribs and then go hang out at the brewery after you're
Oh,
done.
that's cool. So, and is it open? Because I think Lewis Barbecue's open like 6 days a week or 7 days a week or
Yeah,
something.
it's the same thing. It made me seven. It's a full service
Mhm.
restaurant. It is very much part of the Charleston dining scene. So it's not just some joint off in the country. It's a full service fine dining restaurant, full bar, great margaritas, all that kind of thing. Oh, I didn't mention it. They make their own tortillas. Right, they have a tortilleria
Nice.
right in the back where they roll out both flour and corn tortillas and
Uh,
make them, every day. And you can sit there and watch them rolling off the line, which is really impressive. And they're some of the best tortillas I've ever had.
So it's an additional reason to go to Charleston. Oh,
Yeah. Now,
sounds...
house-made tortillas or fresh tortillas aren't a big deal in other parts of the country, but in the South, it's fairly rare still. And so when you find a place like that makes their own fresh tortillas, it's really worth checking out.
No, then there's a lot of places that don't make their own tortillas, or
Yeah.
there's something special, especially if they're coming straight from someone making them right there on site.
Yeah, and they're literally the guys is making them in the middle of summer. Like you see them coming out, and the waiters are coming and picking up little containers of it fresh from the window of the
I love
tortilleria.
it.
So I mean, they're coming right off the griddle onto your plate.
Excellent. Okay, now I've heard of these people, Leroy and Lewis Barbecue.
Yep, in Austin, Texas. Again, this is one of those. Okay, when are you a joint? When are you not a joint? Because Leroy and Lewis, have not. They're not new operation. They've I can't remember exactly when they started. Evan Leroy was the pit master at Friedman's Bar in downtown Austin, and Sawyer Lewis was a GM at, I think it was Contigo, I think it was called, a fine dining restaurant, sort of a Southwest fine dining restaurant in Austin. And they teamed up sometime before the pandemic and set out, opened a barbecue food truck, like many will do. They ended up finding a semi-permanent place at the Cosmic Coffee Park or something like that. It's
like a food park or a pot.
Yeah, it was like a coffee and place with bar. Like there was a brick and mortar with a lot of big patios, and then like a food truck sort of area where different food trucks would park up. And they ended up sort of parking there full time, I guess. But had been looking for restaurants for a while and finally found a location. It's not too far from the Cosmic Coffee. I think it's a little couple miles south, further south from downtown Austin. But it's a brand new building, much larger. So they have their own space now. Unlike at the other place, they now have their own bar. They don't have to go to somebody else's bar to get stuff. And so they can do a lot more things. I think they have something like 4 times as much room in the 4 times as much pit room as they used to, actual square feet of pits in their new pit house. So they're able to do a lot of different things. I think a lot of the old favorites there, I'll always love their whole hog. I've always been crazy about the kimchi, which is an unusual thing to find at a barbecue joint, but I always thought it went really well with it. They're still doing all that kind of stuff. I think Evan is now doing this. Yeah, he's doing a sliced beef that I think he gets the whole 4 quarters himself and like butchers them in house and cooks them on the pits and all that kind of stuff. So it's a chance for them. I mean, they've always had this idea of new school barbecue, of doing things different. They don't try to be the classic Texas Trinity. They try to mix it up a little bit with different flavors. And I think this gives them a much bigger place to do it in. And with the full, now you can get cocktails, beer, wine. I think they even have a bakery there. So there's a lot more options there. So expanded horizons for Leroy and Lewis.
Yeah, and it seems like I think they have steak nights and they do some other things.
And they're able to switch it up with all kinds of different things like that. And they still have all the old favorites from the food truck park, but now that a lot more stuff.
And it's a place too for people to know they don't have brisket every day. It's that, and then that's the point. It's
it's not it is new school. It's not trying to be like every other Texas barbecue joint, and they do have brisket on Saturday, maybe one day a week.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
They'll serve brisket. But it's a special for them. It's not their showpiece like it is from most Texas joints.
Well, it looks like a beautiful building, and from what I've heard,
great.
it's everything that they wanted, and it's something that they've been striving to have. So I think that
they've been tried. I think they tried several other places that kept falling through, which is sort of a theme. If you talk to anybody who's gone from food truck to brick and mortar, it usually takes a couple of swings at it before they can find a place that works out for them.
Yeah, even someone like Goldie's has, I know that they had searched upon a bunch of different locations, and then there's other barbecue joints that chose those locations and popped up. So but it's interesting. I'm really, really happy that they have their brick and mortar. I'm glad that they made this list, because even though it's like skirts the lines of the new, but they are new because it's a new spot.
I think it's worth highlighting because it's not the same. It's not the same place to just move to a different location. It's different. It's a different experience, much different experience than eating at the old. The last time I ate at the old coffee place, it was I think 102 degrees. It was just not. The barbecue was great, but boy, was I suffering to eat it.
Yeah, because it's outdoors in the element. So it's nice that you can
Yep.
actually go indoors. So that's awesome. And again, for anyone listening or watching, I'm gonna put a list of I'll put a link to everything you've talked about on your like for the digital version of Southern Living, but also I'll put addresses and like a link to
Yeah. Great.
that way it'll make it. And so Longleaf Swine, I'm really, really curious to hear about them because I number one, I just love the I love the name. It's just an interesting name, but please explain what they're all about.
Yeah, so this is another food truck that took a long time to get to brick and mortar. Adam Cunningham and Mark Russell are the two guys behind it. They're both sort of fine dining vets, from fine dining kitchens in the Raleigh area. They at some point opened a food truck, like a lot of fine dining folks did, and then they were starting to look for brick and mortar. Initially, I think they had a deal to move into one of the food halls in Raleigh, so one of those places where there's a lot of stalls and all that. And that was going to be their first jump up. And then COVID happened, and that sort of put the brakes on it. And they, weren't going to move in. And so then they ended up giving that up and starting to look. And they found this old cafe in downtown Raleigh. You can see the Capitol building from there, like the dome of the Capitol building. It's like a couple blocks from the Capitol. So a great downtown location. And it was this old sort of cafe that had been, I think originally an old gas station that had been turned into a cafe.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
they essentially, I'm not sure if it was one of those things where they got into it, it was more work, or it was always the plan, but they ended up basically just gutting the whole thing and just leaving nothing but the frame and then redoing it, the whole thing. And it took so much longer than they expected, but opened it up and it's really worthwhile. And the Longleaf Swine is reference to, they cook classic North Carolina style whole hog. And that's really what puts it over the top for me. They also do Texas style brisket and ribs, and they're excellent. Good examples of that. But the hog is really what's special. And I'm really encouraged to see new restaurants that are opening up and doing, wood cooked whole hog, the old school way. And it's right there in downtown Raleigh. Beautiful, like sort of big broad patio with a bar, and it's a great place to hang out and either just have lunch or hang out for a long afternoon and eating barbecue, having a beer too.
Yeah, and it looks like a beautiful location too, from what
It is.
Yeah, the pictures.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I've seen some I saw renderings. I think at first I was kind of following them from afar.
But they definitely are trying to, you know, blend the traditional North Carolina. They're very focused on traditional East North Carolina, and then blending that with the Texas more craft Texas style of cooking.
Well, it's nice that Raleigh continues to grow too. It just seems
Yeah, and Raleigh is really booming. As there's lots of great barbecue restaurants now in the Raleigh-Durham area. Actually, Jake Wood of Lawrence Barbecue, who is been one of my favorites. He was on the last best new list
I remember.
because he had opened in time for that. He just announced that he's opening a much bigger. He's in this little sort of cool food park kind of place called Boxyard RTP.
Because they're trailer, not in containers,
They're,
right?
they're old shipping containers.
Yeah.
So they took all these old shipping containers and sort of built them, stacked them like a kid might be a building with blocks around a courtyard. And there's a brewery and there's a bunch of other restaurants, and they've got Lawrence Barbecue there, which is really fantastic. It's just gotten better over time. But he's just announced that he's got a new location in downtown Cary, which is the little town just near Raleigh and Chapel Hill, and is going to be opening up a much bigger sort of permanent place there. So he went from pop up to I think the boxcar counts as permanent. It's a permanent stall in a permanent. Those things are not going anywhere. But then it's still pretty small. I think constrained. So this will give him a lot more room and a lot more space to do things.
Yeah, and he's another one of that. It like as there's a common thread amongst all this is there's chefs. There's really good chefs.
Yep.
That are going.
He was a fine dining chef as well. Yeah, worked in kitchens, and so they bring that sensibility to it, and then mix it with the smoke, and it's just it leads to all kinds. And Jake, like the guys at Longleaf Swine, they're experimenting. They do a lot of great specials, and just always something interesting to find every day. It's not the same menu every day when you walk up. Yeah,
and this is, we're not talking about Lawrence Barbecue isn't on this list that we're talking about, but also he has oysters, which is really cool. I think that's in the
Yeah, he was used to work at a seafood restaurant, and so he always loved oysters. And so he has. Where else can you get start off with a half dozen oysters and then move on to brisket and ribs?
Yeah, that's and I'm so happy that you're highlighting these. That's why it's important. I like to do these episodes, just because there's a kind of a blinders to barbecue, and then there's a lot of great places popping up and people experimenting and doing things that are
Yeah.
fresh and new and wonderful. Bringle's Smoking Oasis.
Yeah, so this is Kerry Bringle, is the Bringle behind Bringle's Smoking Oasis, and his nickname is Peg Leg. And if ever anyone's been to Peg Leg Porker in downtown Nashville, in the Gulch in Nashville, that's his first restaurant. This is a completely different concept. His original Peg Leg Porker, which is great, it's on my top 50 list. It's very much West Tennessee style, those kind of dry rub ribs and chicken, no beef in the house because it's it's West Tennessee style. But Kerry's long been, cooked great brisket and all that, so he decided he was going to do a wholly different concept. And so it's west of downtown, and it's like one of those little triangles, intersections. Yeah, they used to build like little triangular gas stations, in those little slips. And so it's an old triangular shaped gas station building that he took over and basically has created all around it what used to be the pumps and parking lots. Now I think it's artificial turf with like a big shelter, so you can dine under it, and like there's a little small dining area as well, and what used to be the buildings there that's been totally redone. But he does brisket, he does sausage. It's much more Texas style. I sort of fell in love with the pastrami that they have there. It was so good. And nothing wrong with the brisket, but when you pickle it and brine it and then put it on a smoker, it's twice as good. Yeah. So it has a lot of the same style, like with side dishes and things like that, as peg leg porker, but with much more beef influence and sausage and things that they don't do.
And how is it? Do you line up and then is it a lineup kind of style? And then
though when I went, there wasn't a very long line, but you can. It's more of a hangout place. They have big screen TVs, and it's a place to
really big ones, right? Like, don't they have a
to like watch football and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not it's not like a Texas place where you show up at 11, wait in line for an hour, eat and go away. It's much more you just sort of drift in and drift out. And a lot of his business is built around game days. It's people hanging out, drinking beer. It's much more than just a barbecue joint.
Well, it's Tennessee, and that's
it is, yeah.
Football
and that line up and wait for barbecue just isn't a thing in much of the South. That's a Texas thing. But
there's one place that people do line up that we get into later on, but still it's not completely that way. I think you have to ease people into that
you definitely do.
Yeah, and that's how it's been. But it's interesting how across the country people are lining up for barbecue, but it's just it's not common. I think, and people also don't understand why people sell out and all that jazz. We've had those conversations, and those are
if I go to eat barbecue and if their hours are 11 to 8, I walk in at 7 o'clock. I'm not gonna walk in at 7:50, but if I walk in at 7 o'clock, I expect there to be at least something on the menu. The idea that we closed at 3 because we sold everything out, that just doesn't. That doesn't fly at very many places down here.
That's so funny. That's cool. Well, I definitely want to support him too, because Kerry Bringle, he's such a great guy. He's definitely stuck to his guns. He's a great businessman. I know a lot of people that talk to him behind the scenes to learn business acumen.
Yeah, he's very tied in with the barbecue community all throughout the South, and mentored a lot of folks. But yeah, you're right. He has sort of took his style and stuck with it, and not really done he's done it his way, and it's worked it out for him.
And I think it's also funny too that a lot of people have asked like when they ask him how he lost his leg, which is a weird thing you would ask anybody, but I've heard he has like several stories, like one involving an alligator that got it. I think it was cancer.
Yeah, he named the restaurant after Peg Leg, so he's embracing that. That part of his personality too. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. This is one that I'm not familiar with very much. Redemption Barbecue.
Yeah, this one I'm really excited about. This is in Richmond, Virginia. And actually just sort of a little west of Richmond, I think, just sort of in a normal old kind of shopping center. Doesn't look like much, but it's an absolutely fantastic experience. It's a guy named John Vest who got sort of obsessively involved, fascinated with Virginia barbecue history, and began really wondering, well, what is Virginia? Why is there no Virginia style barbecue these days? Because if read my book, Barbecue History of American Institution, I delve into the Virginia's past and how much great barbecue there used to be there, but there really hasn't been in the late 20th century. And so he's trying to sort of reclaim it. Redemption is part of it, redeeming Virginia barbecue, but it's really trying to go back to old style. He cooks over like pork, and he's very committed to using local sort of heritage breed meats, pigs and chicken and that type of thing. In fact, it's a half restaurant, half butcher shop. You can buy frozen, all kinds of frozen meats in there. If you're not getting barbecue, but it cooks on all wood, direct heat, shoveling coals. Sort of trying to go back to the old style. He has like a little selection of different Virginia style barbecue sauces, which are all a little bit different than what you might find elsewhere. So he's trying to use Virginia sauces and all that kind of stuff. It has the most interesting pork rinds I've ever had. They're white. They look almost like they're smooth, almost like styrofoam. They're almost like some kind of weird styrofoam thing, and you put it in your mouth, and then almost as it melts, because it's pork rinds from these heritage breed pigs. They're cooked in the rendered lard. It's fried in the lard. So it's like you don't want to eat a whole bag of them because they're very rich, but they have quite an unbelievable flavor. So he's really super serious about getting back to the old way of doing things, using the old heritage breed, using the old technique and all that kind of stuff. And
I love that.
I love it too. But I recently when I went to Redemption, I took a tour of all of Virginia. I'm going to be working on a piece on Virginia barbecue for Southern Living. There's a lot of great old barbecue restaurants in Virginia, including a couple that have really sort of upped their game in recent years. So I tried to like revitalize a couple that went from gas-fired pits to cooking on all wood again. And so Virginia's barbecue scene is really starting to heat up a little bit, and places like Redemption, we'll talk about another one in a minute, are starting to really I think build it a reputation. There's some great places like ZCQ in Richmond, which is another great Virginia, but it's Texas style. Redemption, I'm happy to see, is really trying to say what is Virginia barbecue and trying to put that back on the map.
I love that so much. That's great. Yeah. Brisket and Rice. Yeah,
Brisket and Rice, a new place in Houston. It's sort of funny. It's like it's just like, well, Houston's so big. If you're out, it's like northwest of Houston. If you're on your way to Tomball to go to Tejas Chocolate and Barbecue, which is one of my favorite Houston places, this is where on the way from downtown. So go there as well. It sort of epitomizes to me what's happening in Houston today. It's two brothers, and I think it's Hong and Fong Tran, and one of their wives. And so the three of them are sort of building on their I guess her famous Vietnamese on that background, and mixing it with Texas style barbecue. Got I think two big primitive pit smokers to the side. It's an interesting place because it's like a gas station, and like gas stations have a little restaurant next to it. I think it used to be like a fried chicken restaurant or something, like a Church's Chicken or something. So it's not really a barbecue joint per se, but the food is really, really well. It's great. It's great barbecue to begin with. Good brisket, ribs, sausage, all the Texas stuff. But then it's literally brisket and rice. If you order brisket, you'll have a pile of jasmine rice, and the brisket sort of laid over it with a sauce. It almost looks like, well, like if it was smaller, it might look like sushi, but it's sort of presented that similar way. They do a brisket, I think it's called barbecue rice, a brisket fried rice, where they'll cube brisket and they stir fry it with rice and egg and make it into this big mound, a big ball of it, and do all that kind of stuff. And then they have a poor man's macaroni, which they say, I guess, is a sort of a staple in a lot of Vietnamese restaurants, which is just macaroni mixed with, I think, ground beef and tomato sauce. But to me, it's almost like my mother used to make this, almost a very similar thing, where they would, for some reason, would mix spaghetti sauce, ground beef, and macaroni cheese or macaroni noodles, and make a meal out of it. So that they have that as well. And what I like about that, and we'll talk about it, I think another place that does a similar side dish, or it's something that is from their family and from their background, and they're bringing it into the barbecue joint. And if you think of places like Blood Brothers in Houston, there's so many great mashups now of Asian food and barbecue, and I think those flavors really go so well together.
Oh, yeah,
and it's a cool place and worth checking out.
And it seems like it's a place that would make sense in Houston for some reason. It just, in my mind, it makes sense.
Yeah, Houston is such a melting pot.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most diverse southern cities, at least by and just so many interesting things going on there on the food scene, both barbecue and
Yeah.
otherwise.
Hamburger Helper is kind of like, isn't that kind of like
Yeah, it's kind of like this. Yeah, and I guess what my mom was doing was homemade hamburger
yeah,
helper
that's what
because you
I've had
just
home by
you know,
scratch. Yeah, that's because I think a lot of people have
yep.
still stolen the idea and made it from scratch because it's a lot better from scratch.
Yeah, and if you have some spaghetti, it's like leftover. You have leftover spaghetti,
Yeah,
whatever spaghetti sauce, and then mix it in
yeah.
with noodles, and off you go.
This is like one really quick thing. Do people still do they does Met in Memphis they still do the barbecue spaghetti?
They do, yeah. I think the barbecue shop, I love theirs. It's where it
Oh,
originated. The recipe originated there, not from the previous owners of the barbecue shop.
yeah.
They got the recipe when they bought the restaurant.
The Neely's, like the family
Yeah, the
Neely family.
Neely's
Was that
will do
Central or
it.
something?
Interstate Barbecue
Oh, Interstate,
has
yeah.
good barbecue spaghetti, and Cozy Corner,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
which another great Memphis place. They have the barbecue spaghetti as well. So it's still all over town,
Yeah,
and it's definitely I love it because it's unique to Memphis, and I
yeah.
like things that are sort of
Well,
very regionally specific.
I had barbecue spaghetti in Portland at Bark City Barbecue. He does
Hmm.
it now, but he does it because he had seen it on the Food Network and seen it done in Memphis, and so he does. But he has like scratch made pasta brought in, and then he makes it, to order, and it's really good.
All I know is that at the barbecue shop, they actually cook the sauce in the barbecue pit, and
Oh,
with pork and stuff in it. And the owner said the sauce is not it's not their regular barbecue. It's not just barbecue sauce. It's
oh,
something, a special sauce, tomato and barbecue sauce kind of blend of some sort that they make
that's cool.
specifically for the barbecue spaghetti. And they do it in the pit, which makes it extra flavorful, I think.
Yeah,
Gets
definitely.
gets
No,
a smoke to it.
no, I love that it still lives on. That's something.
Yeah.
It's definitely off topic, but it definitely lives on. That's Jack's Creek. Is it that's good. Jack's Creek Barbecue. Another one that I have not heard of before.
Yeah, this opened last summer. I sort of it's from Zach Parker. You have to get the generations right.
Ah,
Who
yes.
is
Okay.
the third generation owner of Scott's Barbecue in Lexington, Tennessee? Early Scott founded it, and then Zach Parker's father bought it. Worked for Early Scott, bought it from him, and then Zach sort of inherited after his father passed away, and has been running the Scots, which is fantastic. If you've never been
Yeah.
there, is the pit room is unlike anything else. They're one of the few restaurants in West Tennessee. They're still cooking whole hogs, the West Tennessee style of whole hog cooking. So at Scott's, they have these giant cinder block pits and this huge, almost like a barn of a pit room. And then the only other place in West Tennessee that up until last summer, they did whole hog is Ramey's in Parsons, Tennessee, another great place worth visiting. So only two places doing whole hog in Western Tennessee. And then there's this little barbecue joint called Jack's Creek Barbecue. And so this technically isn't the first barbecue restaurant called Jack's Creek in that building. It's a little white cinder block building at this little crossroads in Jack's Creek, Tennessee. And owned by a family who had long ago, they had a pit house out back. They got rid of the pits and started cooking on, I guess, a gas, gas fired pits or something like that. And then they were ready to retire and wanted to find someone to put it up for sale. Zach Parker saw it and said, "I'm gonna buy it."
So
And
this is the one that he
it's
bought. Okay, I remember
yeah,
hearing that he was going to buy one. Okay.
yep. So he's bought it, and it's not far from uh from Scott's. It's probably about 10 to 20 mile, so he goes back and forth between them. I think he's now found a pit master, but one of the first things he did was he took the old pit house out back, which was just filled with junk, had been used sort of as a storage shed. He pulled all the junk out. The pits are still there, refurbished the pits, and they're almost like the ones that he uses in Lexington. Center block pits, cooks, shovels of coal from a chimney up under the pits, rebar, puts pieces of cardboard over the top, which is something they
That's how
do
they do it
at
there. Yeah.
Scott's as well. And you're cooking the whole hog. Now the menu is more like what the Jack's Creek barbecue menu was like, I think. They did some new slaw and beans, which is sort of the classic West Tennessee, but a little new recipe. So it's a different recipe than they use at the other restaurant. So they are different
Oh.
names. But what unites them is that whole hog.
Mhm.
And so I consider it a brand new restaurant. It's
It
certainly a
is essentially.
revitalized restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's now we have three. whole hog restaurants in West
Ah,
Tennessee, which I
I'm
think is great.
so glad you highlighted them. I'm so glad you brought that up. I love Zach and I love what he's doing and I love what he stands for. Such a great guy and he loves community. He's really, and so
Yeah.
the reason why at least from what I had heard is he just wanted to make sure that the community still had this restaurant though.
Yeah, and it was a sort of blow to the community because there's not a lot of restaurants and this is a tiny little town, except some fast food things here and there. So this is a gathering place for people, and so he's very committed to that. And it was interesting while I was there. He's was out, came out, was talking to everybody, chatting them up. He's sort of like you know, he's hosting the community, and at the same
Mhm.
time was very passionate. It's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the right way. I want to
Ah,
do it over coals and all that. And I do think I saw that he found somebody to cook for him. So he's not having to, he was going back and forth, getting the pig started over here and then going back to Scott's and working there and then going back over here. So I think he can now balance it a little bit better.
that's so great. And and it gives another reason to go to the area and go to Tennessee
Yeah.
and visit these places. I am so
Yeah.
excited.
So you
That's
can now do I think three is enough to count as a whole hog tour. So you can now do a whole hog tour and a couple of
yeah,
other great places in all within
yeah.
like, it's sort of like that West, it's between Nashville and Memphis. So you can do it like you can go Helen's and Brownsville. There's a couple other great ones in that area that you can visit.
Well, and the next one on the list is a person who's really good friends with Zach Parker.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And Zach and Blake are good friends. It's called Blake's get the name right. It's Blake's Barbecue at Southern Milling.
Mhm.
And it's a ways. It's probably 2 hour drive from Zach Parker's place, but
It's in
uh
Martin, Tennessee.
in Martin, Tennessee. Yep. So up in the northwest part of Tennessee.
Okay.
Nice drive, as I recall, getting up there. I didn't really know what to expect because it was Blake's at Southern Milling. I knew it was an old mill. For some reason, I thought it was like one of those, it'd be like converted into a store or like a some other mixed use retail kind of thing. And
Oh, like it
Blake
was
had
like
a
chopped
restaurant.
up into a bunch of
And
yeah.
like he had a restaurant because it was Blake's at Southern Mill. I thought it was like, sort of a food hall kind of situation. Nope, that's not what it is at all. It's absolutely impressive. It's this giant old mill, grain mill, right in downtown Martin. It's like two blocks maybe from the little Main Street downtown. Beautiful building, white, and it was sitting empty. He has totally just renovated the whole inside of it. They have a lot of the pictures of what they found as they're renovating all this old stuff. It was just sort of sitting there gathering dust in the old mill. And so it's like all old, hardwood, all these old beams.
Ah,
They ripped out a bunch of what used to be a ceiling. And so now half the restaurant is sort of open and there's a second floor you can, seating up there and a big staircase and
oh
all
cool.
that kind of stuff. All this old machinery and stuff they sort of have restored.
I love
Then
that
as
so
you walk
much.
up, yeah, off the back though, he built out this big pit room. There's like four maybe giant
I
offset
think so.
smokers on the back. Yeah, with a screen porch on sort of on this raised up a bit on the back. And so he's not doing anything by half measures. And it's a full service restaurant. You walk in, there's a hostess stand, you sit down. They have banquet rooms. It's like a really just a community restaurant for Martin, for doing a lot of special events and stuff like that. Full bar and all that kind of stuff. And he's doing Texas style. It's really good brisket and pork and sausage and all that kind of stuff. But then it's also the big broad menu. I remember the deviled eggs are really good. It's like appetizers and salad. They have lots of stuff like that on the menu. So it's a full sit down family restaurant with waitress
Yeah.
service and
And
everything
I think on
else. And
Saturdays they have brunch and I think it's
yeah,
yeah.
events and four giant smokers in the back cooking
Gosh.
like
Yeah, no,
old
I'm happy
school
because he's one of the
classic
ones
brisket.
that came from a food truck.
Yep.
He had one in Dresden, then I think in Martin, and then now.
Yep. I don't know what inspired him to. I don't know if he just found the mill or what, but he went from little food truck to big time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a beautiful building. So it's just walking in is like an experience of
Yeah, I
itself.
think it's
Especially if
a
you go over the far side. There's all these pictures and stuff. It's almost like a museum to the old mill and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time over there looking at all the pictures
I am
while I
really,
was waiting
really
for my
excited
food.
to this is one of, and it's more of a destination barbecue joint because there's not any other barbecue joints and
Yeah,
really
there's not a lot in that area, so you wouldn't be just you wouldn't do it on your circuit through there. But if you happen to be passing anywhere near Barton, it's
yeah.
worth a detour. And if you're doing a Tennessee tour, I think it's worth spinning up that way on your way west. As you can loop down to Memphis eventually.
I can't wait. And that, just another Tennessee spot. I love I
Yep.
love Tennessee, and it just makes me happy that there's another place to go visit.
Yeah, I'm just the barbecue scene's just getting better and better up in Tennessee.
That's cool. And then another place that's not in Tennessee, Dane's Craft
Yep.
Barbecue.
Yep. Dane's another food truck guy who took him forever. I think he had a one or two brick and mortar locations he was working on that fell through for
Mhm,
various reasons and then finally opened up. I think it's Aledo is the name of the town.
mhm.
Actually west of Fort Worth, like a little railroad town. It's sort of like a classic Texas. I think it's a Texas setting. Like it's an old building, and across the street there's a railroad tracks and
Yeah, I
like a
think I
grain
saw a picture.
elevator. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So it's sort of like it feels very Texas
If
to
you're going to
me.
set a movie in like a barbecue place, that would be it.
Yeah. And if you're opening barbecue Texas, okay, you got to have great brisket, ribs, sausage, pulled pork. You got to do
Mm,
the Texas standards. I think what I like about Dane's is that not only is all that stuff super solid, but he always has interesting stuff going on. He has this insane smash burger, which I'm like, yeah, everybody has a smash burger, but his is really, really
yeah.
one of the best I've had. It's really good. He does this Frito pie beans, which the classic Texas Frito pie is sort of like Fritos with you know onions, brisket, chili, whatever, poured into the bag. He does a little different. He takes the sort of cowboy beans and then covers them with Frito, like in a little bowl, covers them with Fritos, cover them with melted cheese, squiggles of crema and all that kind of stuff on it. It's some of the best barbecue beans I've ever had. And the kind of thing where, yeah, there's barbecue over here, but I'm eating I'm eating these
Mhm.
beans. So it's a great location. And in addition to just having solid craft barbecue, there's always some interesting stuff to find there as well. And just one of those guys who so focused on
Mhm.
quality and doing things interesting and doing things a little bit different.
Yeah. And a lot of people that I've talked to over the years have said, I do this because of Dane. And I know his sausage program is
Yeah.
second to none. And I know a lot of people that have said, I make this because, or even I think his pork belly. I think doesn't he do some pork belly?
Yeah,
Is
he does a splendid pork belly. I had that. It's like it's sort of like a crispy smoked pork
yeah,
belly kind of thing, which is just crazy. Yeah, it's one of those. There's so much stuff on the menu.
yeah.
You really need to go with about 8 people if you want to try to cover it all.
That's good, and that's a good tip. That's a great tip. Now, this
Yep.
next one is another place that I could see in Houston or Charleston. I should have said
Yep.
Houston and Charleston seemed like places that these places could pop up. This is King Barbecue.
Yeah, it is. But I don't think it could be anywhere else. I
Okay,
think
all right.
it's well, maybe it could be anywhere else. It could be anywhere where Shua Wong is, who is the owner. He and his wife own a place called Jackrabbit Philly here in Charleston. They
All right.
this is King is their second restaurant. Jackrabbit Philly is more of a new Chinese food kind of place. It's sort of like mixes. Shuai was born in Beijing and raised in Queens in Flushing, Queens, and then moved down here at some point back before the pandemic with his wife. They were coming down for restaurant jobs that somehow fell through, so they decided to open a food truck called Short Grain. It was a sort of rice bowl based food truck, a lot of sort of contemporary chefed up Asian kind of stuff, or it's that kind of mix of Asian with American junk food, that like Doritos and stuff
I
like
love
that.
that.
So a little bit of a mashup there, and that was a big success. And then they were looking to do their second restaurant. Their chef de cuisine at Jackrabbit Philly is a guy who happened to have been raised in the Piedmont, North Carolina. And then here in Charleston, he was on the opening team at Home Team Barbecue, which is one of the
Yeah.
sort of really the first craft barbecue joint in Charleston. And so he had been cooking on Lying Smokers and all that before he went over to Jackrabbit Philly. So they sort of doubled down. Originally, they were going to do like Southern style barbecue with a few Asian twists, reflecting Shuai's background. And as they were getting into it, they're like, no, this doesn't feel right. And it feels like everybody's doing this, right? We're just doing the same tray of barbecue with a little bit of, this and that. So Shuai grew up in Queens, and his first experience of barbecue was at these Chinese barbecue restaurants, like the Chinatown type restaurants. So if you think of the Peking duck and,
Hmm. The
and all that
pork
kind
and
of
the
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. All the pork
barbecue
and
pork. That's
everything
a
else.
barbecue pork, but Chinese style barbecue. Yeah.
Yeah, Chinese style barbecue pork, often done in roasted in an oven, not a pit. And so he said, what we're going to do is we're going to do Chinatown style barbecue and
Ah,
give it the Southern barbecue twist. And so they cook it all on Lying Smokers, and so it's legit.
yeah.
Not in the oven, but a lot of those they're red their ribs, they're glazed with this red char siu, I guess the ribs is what
Yeah.
they call it. So it's like this, like the little ribs that you get at a Chinese restaurant, but they're bigger ribs that are cooked on a line. But boy, that sauce is great. But my favorite thing is they do these noodle bowls, and you can get a noodle bowl with chopped pork, and they do one with hash. So you can get hash and rice, but you can also get hash and noodles, which is the way to go. And they have like eggs and like the green onions and all that kind of stuff, and a great sauce and all that. And it's I think noodles are what barbecue's long been missing. So it's very unique. They have like the big green jade dragons flanking the door. It looks sort of like a Chinese restaurant. Then you go inside, it's sort of like a barbecue restaurant, and a little bit of both.
It looks so good, and also too, if you follow their Instagram below, I'll put a link to it. You'll see like they even do like I think it's like almost like a Big Mac, but it's a version of a Big Mac. Like they just do random things. They're very creative, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they are always putting twists on things. Like I say, a lot I don't want to call it pop culture, or whatever, but sort of take like pop foods like a Big Mac and say, but let's do it seriously, and let's make it as tasty and delicious, and it's also a little over the top. But there's, like I say, it's very different than the Houston restaurants we're talking about that is sort of fusing Asian and barbecue,
Okay,
because
there you
it's a totally different a different aesthetic coming into it, and there's no place quite like it. They also have a great cocktail bar with wonderful cocktails and lots of other things. So it's a great place to hang out in addition to
Well, now that you explained it,
eat.
it completely makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. It's unique too, and it's in Charleston, right?
It's in Charleston. It very much feels like a Charleston restaurant. Charleston it's sort of in the mode of there's lots of sort of what I call cross culinary fusions going on in Charleston right now. But with that kind of chefy sensibility of taking, either a mix of traditional and sort of like pop foods, and then making them with really serious technique and really good ingredients and all that kind of stuff.
I'm excited. Now the next one is City Limits Barbecue, and it's Robbie Robertson. And I always think of wasn't there a musician? It was
that was Robbie Robertson was in the band. This is Rob Benson. Who
is in my head I always mix it up. Yeah, okay.
Another food truck operator. He had City Limits was originally a food truck. He used to, if you may be familiar with Columbia, used to park up in 5 Points, which is sort of the bar district in downtown Columbia, right near the University of South Carolina, and selling originally a Texas style barbecue place, a big offset smoker. And then he found sort of a semi-permanent location out in West Columbia, but still running the food truck kind of operation, West Columbia, out on the other side of the river from downtown. And then came across this, I think it's this weird little place that used to be a garden center, like, selling plants and all that. And he pointed it out to me while he was there, like the dining room is this old sort of building that used to have a bunch of plants and stuff like that. And the concrete floor is sort of sloped so that I guess the water would run off.
Yeah, it makes sense.
when you water the plants. It's still that way. But sort of a ramshackle building is like a little like deck area built up here. And it's sort of a barbecue compound. Unlike a lot of the places here in Carolinas, people do line up for it. He only serves, I want to say, Saturday and Sunday right now.
I think you're right.
Though he was looking to add another day or two if he could. And I think as of now, still, last time I looked at least, the full barbecue menu is only on Saturday. So if you really want to get the full experience and you're traveling from out of town, you can go there on Saturday. And then Sunday they do other, make different, a little more limited menu.
Yeah,
but
like hot dogs and things and a bunch of
hot dogs and stuff like that. So if you're local,
scratch made,
or you could go both days if you're passing through, but it'd be a little bit different. But go on Saturday if you can to get the full experience. Always is brisket and ribs are always great. Some of the best ribs, the brisket, some of the best brisket around in the Carolinas for sure. Sausage and all that. And his ribs used to be good, as I recall them from the food truck days. He was doing very much the Texas style on the offset smoker. Then he decided he wanted to change it up a little bit, and he took one of his small offsets and went to got a larger smoker, and he now doesn't burn wood in the firebox. Instead, he puts sheet pans up in it. It has a burn barrel, and then comes and shovels the coals up under the grates. And now he does the ribs direct heat over, this far up to 2 feet up over the coals. and it's night and day. I mean, the old ribs are good. These ribs are incredible. Some of the best ribs I've ever had. They're sort of akin to the ones like at Dreamland or at Archibald's down in Tuscaloosa, which are also direct heat cooked. But it's absolutely amazing. He does hash and rice as well. His hash is good. So he has and mustard sauce and all that. So he has the Midlands and he's got Texas, and they all come together. You do line up, you do have like the whole carve in front of you experience, which is sort of the way he did it at the food truck. But so he sort of started off with that, and now is starting to layer in some Midland South Carolina traditions, and it's just, it's
Yeah, he's
fantastic
always
place.
thinking. You could tell he's always thinking, always trying to get better. He was a James Beard
Yeah.
semifinalist.
Yep. Yeah, he's gotten a lot of attention. He is one of those obsessively
Yeah.
detail focused person who's always tweaking, always trying to make it better, always thinking
Yeah.
of new ways to do stuff. And while I was there, I was talking to him. He's talking about, he's planning on building out a pit room more and bringing a new kind of pit in so he can do new stuff. And that's what I like to see, because then there's always something. It's not just going back for the same old thing. There's always something new to explore.
Well, it's excellent. And being number 4 on your list that's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
Mama Jean's Barbecue. This is another one I'm throwing again that I don't really know much about.
Yeah, Mama Jean's is in Roanoke, Virginia.
Roanoke.
And Roanoke, up on the edge of the mountains, I guess it's Shenandoah Valley. That's a beautiful drive getting up there. It took me a long while to get there. I know Madison and Kelly Ruckle, mostly from the barbecue circuit. They actually have roots here in Charleston. Madison was at Home Team Barbecue here a long time.
Oh.
I think you could write an interesting article about all the restaurants that have sort of launched out of Home Team. There's so many little connections, but I think she's originally from Roanoke, and at some point they decided to move back to Virginia, and they set up a roving barbecue operation again. They had this little Airstream camper that they were dragging around Roanoke and selling barbecue, and with the aspiration of doing a restaurant, they finally found a place. This is one of the rules to be broken again. I don't know if it's officially counts as a barbecue joint yet or not, but they found an old, I think it was an Italian restaurant. It actually used to be a motor court. You know how the motor courts would have the little rooms in the back and then a little restaurant up front. The restaurant was, I think they bought the whole thing outright. Ended up knocking down the old motor court, which was long abandoned and just sitting there. But the restaurant building there, they were in the process when I was last up there, which was back in the spring, of turning into the full brick and mortar restaurant. I suspect they said they were going to be open by fall. I suspect they probably a little bit longer. Construction takes a while, but they are permanently planted there. They've got the Airstream camper that they're still cooking smash burgers in, and got the pits and sort of picnic tables that they don't have to move. So it is a permanent location, nice big parking lot, all that kind of stuff. And very soon we'll have air conditioning and bathrooms and all that good stuff when they open the.
And what kind of food
is
it? Is it a mix of?
It is from all over the place. And I think, if Home Team style was really to do a little bit of little, geographic stuff from everywhere. And he's doing the same thing, drawing inspiration from all over, visits to Texas. So everything's good. Barbecue's great. Great sausage, but lots of creative flavors in the sausage. He made me a smash burger, because they have like a little flat top in the little Airstream, and the smash burger was great. But like Robert Upson, doing direct heat ribs, and his ribs were really fantastic. And he's another person who just wasn't satisfied with the way the ribs were coming. They were good on the offset smoker, but just wasn't satisfied. So he modified his own direct heat pit, and the ribs are fantastic.
I love that.
And everything's good there. Yeah. And coming from some of that fine dining background as well, he does a lot of side dishes like mac and cheese and stuff like that, with a little bit of a little molecular gastronomical wizardry, in the sauce and all that kind of stuff. Fantastic bologna. He is really focused on like grinding and making his own bologna and smoking it, getting it just right. So obsessive to detail, a little chefy background, rolling in flavors from all over. But the reason it landed at number 3 is just because every single thing is so good. Again, you take 8 or 9 people with you to be able to sample everything.
And
the menu
drive.
Changes every day. Yeah. So they'll post online what they're going to serve today, because he likes to switch it up and do different things.
How far is that is it a scenic drive that people could take? Is that something?
It's a very scenic. Well, a lot of it was on the interstate, but even the interstate up there is very scenic. It's going through the mountains. But once you sort of get off and heading toward the Roanoke, it's nice rolling. It's not in the mountains there, but it's like in the rolling hills, a lot of
Mhm.
rivers, you know, and the Valley is just beautiful, especially in the
Yeah.
spring. I was up there on a beautiful April afternoon, and I imagine in the fall it's absolutely gorgeous too. So if you're going up to that part of Virginia and you're going through the Shenandoah Valley, it's definitely worth going and heading over to Roanoke and getting lunch.
You're making my list so much longer. I have to be on the road for like 4 months just to catch up. Okay, so now we're back to Texas. This is Barb's
Yep.
BQ. Barb's
Yeah, and
BQ.
I think you had Chuck on
Yeah, long, yeah,
your
back in
show
the
at one
day.
point,
Yeah,
but before she opened
yeah,
Barb's BQ. So Chuck Carneyhart, she's still, I think, still pretty young person who got into barbecue. I think when she was at UT Austin in Austin, not from a barbecue background. Her career was sort of interrupted by COVID because she was
no,
really always wanted to get into pits at Franklin, never could. Yeah, they did. I think it was a little bit of a not wanting a woman back
yeah,
in the pits. You know, that was a man's place. Ended up making friends though with Johnny from Goldie's, who went on to open Goldie's, and she did a stint in Egypt, sort of like a consulting gig with
yeah.
him
With Johnny, yeah,
during I think the COVID years, and earned some money and came back. Goldie's was just limping along, in the summer, and she was going to go work for them, but they didn't have enough work to bring anybody else on, until Daniel Vaughn wrote made him pick
oh,
him as the
change it
number
overnight.
one,
Yes,
yeah, joint in Texas, and suddenly that lines out the door, and it sort of went off from there. So she worked at Goldie's, and she said everybody, Goldie's does everything. So she was able to work in the pits and able to work up front, and and learn all aspects of the operation, and then launched sort of a pop-up inside of Goldie's where she would do called Barb's BQ, where she would do her own sort of spins, and I think it was like one Saturday a month or something like that.
yeah, I agree.
They would do Barb's BQ, and started looking for a brick and mortar place of her own. If she's up in Fort Worth, and she said that I don't quite understand how she ended up in Lockhart, Texas. It would be the last place I would think to go
Yeah,
open a new barbecue restaurant. I mean, it's Lockhart. They've only have, you know,
a lot.
Blacks, South, Kreitz
Pride's,
Market,
Schmitty.
Smitty's, all within like three blocks of each other. And if you draw a triangle from Smitty's to Blacks to Kreitz, well, she's in the middle of the triangle, so you can walk around there. She has found a spot in Lockhart across from the courthouse, which is this iconic
Yeah,
Texas courthouse, and you can just
beautiful.
right there on the square, and opened the Barb's BQ. And I think it's only still Saturday, Sunday right now, so limited hours, but I think they are getting lots of acclaim, deservedly so. I think the barbecue's great. I think the story is great. Everything is really good there. I remember one of the things I really like though is I just call it green spaghetti,
Yeah.
which is another one of those dishes that was from her family. It's something they ate. I think her mom made, and it's her sort of take on it, which is spaghetti, but it's in this sort of greenish poblano chili. I guess it's a
So I think
chili
she's from
and cream
Brownsville,
sauce.
Texas. Down.
Yes, she is from down south in Texas, from a Mexican American family, and so she said they grew up grilling and having lots of cookout type parties, not really smoking barbecue, but this is one of the recipes that is from her past. So bringing that, just serious hardcore craft barbecue though, learned that at Franklin, and then we get Goldie and Goldie's, and it's right there in the heart of Lockhart. I did ask her, why did you go to Lockhart? She said, I just felt at home here. I felt like it was the right place to be, and
Town.
so now. Yeah. So now Lockhart, and then around the same time, Terry Black, who
Yeah.
is related to the Black family behind Black's Barbecue on the other side of the square, opened up a Terry Black has a couple other locations in Austin and Fort Worth, but he opened one right there in Lock Harbor as well. So they went from having three sort of acclaimed traditional classic barbecue joints to now five. So the town is really, it's long been considered itself the capital of Texas barbecue. I think this helps cement it, and it brings us a little different style and flair
Yeah.
to right downtown than I don't think you have to choose from. You should just go, stay nearby
Yeah.
and eat all five.
Oh yeah, you might as well go to Barb's, and it's a completely different Yeah.
It is completely different. It's much more the craft barbecue mode, and very, very focused. Lots of these little lamb chop things that like smoked lamb
Oh
chops,
yeah.
which are just incredible. So they're bringing a little stuff
Lollipops or something.
into the
They're calling
mix.
them
Yeah,
lollipops or
yeah, I think they
like
call them lamb choppies or something like that. But they're like these cute little lamb chops. They're just really good.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm very happy for. I'm glad that they I'm glad that they made number two on your list, but also I'm just glad that they're functioning and running and it's going on all cylinders and people are
It
really
seems to
enjoying
be
it.
going well. I haven't talked to them recently, but I think they've been welcomed to Lockhart.
Mhm.
I think there's a market there, and I'm sure it's local, but also a combination. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are traveling there and to visit all the other
Yeah.
places in the barbecue capital. So I think they a good crossover between the
And
two.
before we popped to the first number one, I people have told like I've heard from them and from other people that it's not something you have to wait 3 hours in line. Like it's there was a big buzz, but then now you can go and you can wait a little bit. Like the time it's not as crazy. So
Yeah, I think there was definitely lines down the block when they first opened, just because they're also big on social media, so
they're
they have a
smart, yeah.
lot of buzz. They got picked up in a lot of different magazines,
Mm.
and so a lot of people were ready. But I think it has settled down much more
But if you want a chance, you could
to
still
something
visit.
reasonable. And that's my experience in Lockhart in general. I'm sure if you go at prime hour on Saturday, but I typically would walk into Smitty's Krites and
Yeah,
not wait. Maybe two people in front of you. I mean, you don't have to wait
yeah,
for 3 hours like you would if you go to Goldie's or
yeah.
if you go to Franklin or somewhere like that.
And I tell everyone they should go to those places because that's the history of Texas barbecue, and it's
Yeah,
important to
it
kind of
is.
that way you get a
And
barometer as a
it's really good
yeah,
too.
yeah.
It sort of got a bad rap, I think, compared to all the prime brisket
Well, it's
cooked
different.
right to the minute and all
Mhm.
that. But I'm a big fan of shoulder claw, the that sort of
Oh
lean
yes,
beef cut,
yes,
all that kind of stuff. And you just can't beat the atmosphere
yeah.
of those pit rooms and just the whole style. It's like stepping back in time for
Yeah,
sure.
and getting like the chunk of cheese and the onion, like it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, I just, to me, it just like it harkens back to a day that I relish. And so Palmira Barbecue is your number one. I've heard great things.
Yeah, so breaking the rules, that I
Hector,
set out for
right?
myself. Yeah, Hector Garate, I think he appeared on my best new barbecue list twice. No, I take that back. He did not appear, he wasn't open in 21. He appeared on my top 50 barbecue list,
Yes.
then went away, and now he's back on the new list. So how can that be? Well, that's because it's a different restaurant. So it's called Palmira Barbecue, but it's so different that it's worth its own place. And it still fits the 3 year cutoff. So Hector Garate has not been in the barbecue business terribly long. So he started off a pop up in the wake of the pandemic, got really into cooking on a initially offset, cheap old like Oklahoma Joe's offset smoker, cooking Texas style stuff. Um, Met a guy here in South Carolina named Marvin Ross, who operates a heritage breed pig farm called Peculiar Pig Farms. He's like a third, fourth, fifth generation pig farmer, but sort of raises pigs sort of pasture style the way his granddad did way back in the 50s. Um, and long roots in the low country for Marvin Ross, that is, cooking whole hog South Carolina style. So you have Hector Garate, who's born in Puerto Rico, moved to the Carolinas, and I think he grew up near Raleigh, up in North Carolina, and then went to New York, and then ended up back down here, where I think he worked some kitchens in New York, and ended up back down here in Charleston, um, right after the pandemic. And was initially cooking Texas stuff, met Marvin Ross. Marvin introduced him to cooking burn barrel style whole hogs. And they did a couple pop-ups together where they were doing it, they call it Palmyra, but Marvin was doing a lot of cooking. And Hector's one of those, we talk about obsessive attention to
Yeah.
detail, a lot of energy. He's another one of them. He doesn't do anything by half measures. He sort of got into it and decided this Oklahoma Joe pit's no good. And so so what do? Well, you buy a welding rig, learn how to weld, and then you go find a propane
Of
tank.
course, that's
And
how you do.
then, of course, what do? And you make your own offset smoker, which is what he did. And he still has that offset smoker, though he now has, he's collaborating, I guess, with his Primitive guys, I think. Or no, he's Syntax. I think
Syntax, yeah.
he's collaborating with some Texas makers now, but then made his own direct heat pig cooker, the way we use here in the Carolinas. If you've ever seen the way Rodney Scott or Sam Jones have those cookers they use at events, it's a lot like that, a big metal box. Anyway, was doing pop-ups and all that. Sort of, it still has been using Marvin Ross's pigs ever since. Making hash by taking the head of the pig and putting it on the pit and smoking it, and then shredding it and putting it in the pot with all the spices. And so it's like it's not just, I mean, it's the real deal. It's not just, you know, clean pork shoulders. Like a lot of folks, he went from the pop-up very quickly actually to a food hall in downtown. It was called Portical Food Hall. It's actually shut down not too long ago, but before it shut down, he was there for about a year. Right in the heart of downtown Charleston, right off the market. If you've ever been to Charleston, the heart of the tourist district, and it's one of those food halls. It's sort of like a food court, you know, style. Everybody has their stall, and there's a common bar and all that kind of stuff. Barbecue is fantastic, good enough to make it to the top 50 list for me, but the atmosphere, let's just say, was a little bit lacking. And he did it for a year, and then said it's time to move on. And started looking for his own place. Found a little cafe off out in West Ashley, which is the neighborhood west of Charleston, over the Ashley River, out toward where a lot of the old rice plantations and things are, and converted that into a barbecue joint. Yellow painted, it's all nice now. You've got like a, you know, order at the counter up front. He's got a big pit house in the back where he's got his offset smoker. He's got his direct heat pig cooker. He's got a burn barrel. He's carrying the coals, you know, by the shovelful and doing it the right way. He's sort of taken the Texas influence and then the low country sort of classic styles that he learned from Marvin Ross, and then sort of married that with a lot of flavors from his Puerto Rican background. And so when he cooks the whole hogs, for instance, he bastes them with sofrito while they're cooking on the pit, and they go, you know, all night long. And it's such an incredible flavor. He decided not to do brisket because everyone's doing brisket and it's hard to get. Brisket is expensive. But he could get beef cheeks. And I tell you what, there's no, you've never had better beef in your life. So he'll do the beef cheeks slow. It's all, you know, those things are rich with collagen and everything else. You know, if you ever done had a fine dining chef cook them, they're great in the barbecue pit. It's, you know, and it just sort of falls to pieces as you eat it, and it melts in your mouth. He has a very strong sausage program. He has some regular ones, and he always rotating new ones in. Again, incorporating a lot of the Caribbean flavors, Puerto Rican flavors into the sausage itself. Always experimenting and doing new stuff. And there's always specials on the board. The beef cheeks will actually fry these little tostadas and put the shredded beef cheeks of the mound on top, a little pickled onion, a little cotija cheese on top of it. So it's a little Caribbean inflected beef dish. And literally, I've never been there with anybody who didn't, you know, first bite like, oh my God, this is the best barbecue I've ever had. Yes, it's
Really?
very, very impressive. So it's a guy who's very passionate. He's doing his own thing, but he's looking to the past. He's obsessive about using the heritage breed pigs from Marvin Ross. He's obsessive about cooking on all wood, and obsessive about, you know, always having the best and bringing that special influence. And so there's really no place quite like it. It's a mix of old and new. And it was good in the old food hall, but it's so much better when it's cooked literally 4 feet away in the pit room. He had to cook a lot of it out and truck it downtown because he only had room for like one little tiny pit out in the alley downtown. You know, you can't really cook down there. And now it's all fresh cooked. And it's a proper barbecue joint. I mean, you go in the front door, you order at the counter. I've never waited in line behind more than 2 people there, but I'm sure it gets busy at some point. But it's not a 4-hour lineup and wait. Yeah. But it is cut, sliced to order. You know, sort of the way the Texas style folks do it, right in front of you, and the cutters give you advice and help guide you through the menu and all that kind of stuff. And it's got country music on the stereo, and you know, a lot of a proper barbecue decor, if you will.
And there's indoor seating and outdoor seating.
Lots of indoor seating. Yep, good air conditioned, which is important here in Charleston. There is a nice little area with picnic tables. I've never sat at because every time I've been there, it's been at least 90 degrees, and I like to eat in air conditioned comfort.
Yeah, you should make a list of places that are air conditioned.
Yeah, that's
or like a highlight.
Again, that's a Texas thing. Yeah, it's hard to find. Yeah, there are lots of places in Texas that are outdoors only, but here in the Carolinas, most everywhere is air conditioned. There's only a handful. It's only a handful. It'd be easier to make a list of places that don't have air conditioning.
That's true. That is very true. Well, then also too with how is it open multiple days a week?
Yeah, he just added an extra day. I think they're open 4 days a week. I think it's now Wednesday through Sunday. I always will say this is more of a permanent restaurant, but in South Carolina, I always check ahead, call ahead. South Carolina restaurants tend to have, you know, a lot of them operate Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So,
Yeah.
call and make sure. But I think they are now full 5 days a
Yeah.
week.
And if you're in those days in
lunch
the
and
week,
dinner.
the days you would expect to be busy, you might have to wait a little bit longer. Just because that's how a
Yeah,
restaurant.
but it's not a lineup. We start serving and then we sell.
Yeah, people don't get there
serve
8
till we
a.m.
sold
to,
out.
yeah,
Yeah, they're rotating. They're bringing stuff in that they have timed
smart.
out, and they're serving dinner service. And they will run out of things like any barbecue restaurant, but they don't. They try to time it so they always have
They have dinner
enough food
service
for
too.
everybody. Yeah, they have dinner service.
Ah,
Yeah, that's the South. Yeah, the Carolina. I think we want to eat barbecue. Dinner. In fact, the South Carolina tradition was usually a weekend barbecue operations, and it was very much the old South Carolina barbecue places sort of felt like a church family night supper kind of environment, folding tables and metal chairs, but they would be open Friday and Saturday for lunch and dinner, sometimes on Thursday. And it was sort of the weekend family. All the families went, their gathering places and things like that. And so, yeah, in the Carolinas, we expect to, go eat barbecue for dinner. It's not like something
I love
that's
it.
just for lunch,
That's great to know. That's a little nice tidbit. That's important for people to know because people are traveling there and like now because of this, I want to travel even more to South Carolina and North Carolina.
Yeah, if you
and
go to
Virginia.
Rancho Lewis, where we're talking about, as well as Lewis Barbecue, they're open till probably 9, 10
Okay.
o'clock at night, serving straight up until the home team barbecue is open late. I mean, it's a bar atmosphere. It's open till midnight, and I think maybe even later on the weekends. I'm trying to think of a place that's not open for dinner. There isn't really one. I think City Limits in Columbia is much more that Texas style. I think you line up, he starts serving, they will sell out. But most places, certainly here in Charleston, King Barbecue, same thing. It's a hangout place. They're open late. They got a bar.
Cool.
It's a full service restaurant. That is sort of the Charleston MO, at least, if not the
Doesn't
full
home
South
team
Carolina.
and Lewis back up like their backyards are close, like right
They're
next
literally around the corner from each other. Yeah. So if you go out the front door of home team, take a left at the first block,
You're there.
take a left into they back up on each other. You're in the parking lot at Lewis.
Oh, that's cool. Well, thank you so much because we've talked for an hour and almost 40 minutes, and this has been chock full of just so much information. And I truly appreciate. Is there anything else that you want people to know about this list or about anything that we've discussed? Or?
I don't think so, other than it's a lot of fun to put together, but also really hard. It's making the decisions. The rankings are sort of relative. You could swap them in and out, but I think the higher up you get the list, there's just some impressive barbecue in this. And I just would probably wrap up by saying, I think if more than anything, it's a diverse list. It just shows the variety that's going on in the barbecue world right now. It was despairing 5-10 years ago that, oh, barbecue is all the same. Where's the not these days. These places are so different from each other. So much energy and sort of inventive spirit, and people, everybody sort of got back to wood. Everybody sort of knuckled down and really mastered the craft barbecue aspect of it. And now it's sort of flowering into, okay, now what else can we do so that to differentiate ourselves or to incorporate our personal element or do something, that just makes us happy. And I think it's really paying off.
And I know it's a lot of hard work and we appreciate your hard work, but also it seems like it's more fun because it's interesting.
Yeah, it's much more fun than just, trying to distinguish between. I've judged some barbecue competitions where it's plate after plate after plate of these are almost identical, and I'm not enjoying this at all.
Now you have such a mix of so many.
Yeah, so many different things to try, which is why it's why I get back out and go visit all these new places.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time for this. Thank you for doing all the hard work that you put into it.
If it's on the list, I'll be going back to them, and this is candidates for the top 50 for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Robert, so much.